Good afternoon, all. Welcome back to Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I'm Irene Fidianti. I am the State Chief Data Officer, and I am very happy to be here to introduce to you Sean McSpadden. Sean has had more than 30 years of experience in the public, nonprofit, and private sectors. And over the past 26 years, Sean has worked with virtually every Oregon state agency and probably can tell you things about Washington state agencies that you don't know of. And currently, Sean serves as a principal legislative IT analyst with the Oregon's Legislative Fiscal Office. And in this role, Sean has responsibility for oversight of Oregon's IT, information security, GIS, AI programs, projects, and initiatives on behalf of Oregon's legislative branch. Sean also serves as the committee administrator for the Joint Legislative Committee on Information Management and Technology and the Transparency Oregon Advisory Commission. And Sean is also a member of Oregon's Task Force on Artificial Intelligence and also Oregon's representative to the National Conference of State Legislatures Task Force on AI, Cybersecurity, and Privacy. So I'm really big on collaboration with other state agencies and local governments. I'm just thrilled that today we get to be learning from the state of Oregon. Sean, did I miss anything that you would like to tell our folks here?
So Irene, thank you so much for that introduction. Great to be with you. The only other thing I'd mention is that obviously I've been around a long time, but started out with Oregon's Y2K project office back in 1998. Worked in the executive branch in the office of the state CIO for about 15 years, including 5.5 years as Oregon's deputy state chief information officer. So that's the only thing I would add to the background that you gave. And again, it's a great pleasure to be with all of you today, and I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate.
All right, take it away, Sean.
Great, I'm going to share my screen. Just one second. Great, Irene, can you see the main presentation slide deck?
Not yet.
Okay, let me back out of that. Just one second. Here we go. I missed a step. Great.
We've got it now.
Good. Great. And are we all set?
I believe so.
Okay, great.
That looks great.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, it's an honor and a privilege to be with all of you today to share information about cloud security. I'll certainly focus more generically to ensure that it's applicable to any state or local government, but we'll also have an opportunity to share information about the approach Oregon is taking on this important issue. So this morning, I'll provide a brief overview of the legislative agency in which I work, the Oregon Legislative Fiscal Office, and the technology committee that I administer, the Joint Committee on Information Management and Technology, just kind of ground you in some of the work that I do for Oregon. I'll talk a bit about cloud computing and the common risks, issues, and challenges that we all face related to the acquisition, deployment, and use of cloud and as-a-service solutions. And then I'll get a chance to briefly highlight how we're organized in Oregon state government and the executive branch. I'll have a chance to provide some information about Oregon's approach to cybersecurity, which in my view is complicated by that decentralized structure. Certainly our IT operating environment, much as I'm sure it exists in Washington, is both on-premise and in the cloud. So the Legislative Fiscal Office, it's a permanent, nonpartisan office that serves both Oregon House and Senate members of both parties. Among other duties, our office, it evaluates state IT and non-IT expenditures, program administration, and agency organizations. It assists in developing the legislature's adopted balanced budget. That's the primary purpose for our organization. And of course, part of that budget involves information technology and cybersecurity related requests. We also prepare fiscal impact statements on legislative measures that are introduced by members, committees, as they make their way through the legislative process. We also provide professional staff support to a variety of legislative committees. Primary among them are the Joint Committee on Ways and Means and the Emergency Board during our legislative interim. The Joint Legislative Audits Committee, which has a crossover with the Joint Legislative Committee on Information Management and Technology, certainly where cybersecurity or access control audits are concerned. From here on out, if I reference the Joint Legislative Committee on Information Management and Technology, I'll use the acronym. It's JLCIMT for short. So this is the JLCIMT. It's a statutory standing committee. And so we meet both during the legislative session, our long session in the odd numbered years, our short session in the even numbered years, and also during the various legislative interims that we have. The primary role of this committee is to work with the executive branch to establish statewide goals and policy regarding information systems and technology, to conduct studies on information resource management, technology efficiency and security, and to make recommendations on statewide strategies, plans, or the establishment of proposed information resource management programs and projects or information technology acquisitions. Among those duties, the JLCIMT provides IT, AI, cybersecurity program and project oversight in support of the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. And we also do serve as a policy committee. We have the opportunity through the committee co-chairs and committee members to introduce committee bills and oversee these IT, cyber, AI related policy bills as they work their way through the legislative process, as they come to our committee from our various Senate and House policy committees. So just to level set on the next few slides, although this material may be very familiar to some on the call, I just wanted to make sure that we have a good grounding in some of these key concepts that certainly have an effect on how we secure this cloud environment, the differences that we need to be aware of between on-premise computing infrastructure and that infrastructure application and service delivery that we accomplish through the cloud. So in this 2011 special publication from NIST, NIST defines cloud computing as a model for enabling ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources. So here, they're primarily focused on networks, servers, storage, applications, and services. Certainly, those resources can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management effort or service provider interaction. Moving from the bottom to the top lanes of this graphic, the cloud computing model, it's composed of 5 essential characteristics. They're listed here. 3 service delivery models, primarily the software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. And those services can be accessed or deployed in 4 primary ways, either in a private cloud, a community cloud, a public cloud, or some kind of hybrid arrangement. In 2013, NIST began to augment its information about cloud computing, and certainly through their standards roadmap began to describe these important roles, these cloud actors, the cloud consumer, the cloud provider, the cloud carrier, the cloud broker, and the cloud auditor, all important roles in this continuum. The cloud consumer, of course, that's us as state agencies, certainly the agencies in all 3 branches access cloud computing. We're the ultimate stakeholder that the cloud computing service or the cloud provider needs to serve. A cloud consumer, it can be a person or an organization that maintains a business relationship with and uses these various services from a cloud provider. As the table highlights, depending on the services requested, whether that be infrastructure, platform, or software as a service, the activities and usage scenarios can be different among cloud consumers and providers. Ultimately, we have different roles different levels of access and control and different responsibilities for securing these systems, these pieces of infrastructure, depending on the type of service we might acquire. So the graphic on the left side of the screen, it further depicts this sample set of services typically available to all of us within these different delivery models. And the graphic on the right, it depicts the major activities typically performed by cloud providers. For SaaS, the cloud provider deploys, configures, maintains, and updates the operation of software applications on a cloud infrastructure so that services are provisioned at the expected service levels to all of us, the cloud consumers. The provider of a software as a service solution assumes most of the responsibilities in managing and controlling the applications and the infrastructure, while the cloud consumers have limited control over the applications. For platform as a service, the cloud provider manages the cloud infrastructure for the platform and provisions tools and executes resources for the platform consumers to develop, test, deploy, and administer these applications. In this service model, consumers have control over the applications and possibly the hosting environment settings, but we can't access the infrastructure underlying the platform, including the network, servers, operating systems, and storage. For infrastructure as a service, the cloud provider provisions the physical processing, storage, networking, and other fundamental computing resources, as well as manages the hosting environment and cloud infrastructure for infrastructure as a service consumers. As consumers, we then deploy and run applications on top of that, and we have more control over the hosting environment and operating systems, but we don't manage or control the underlying cloud infrastructure. I know that was a lot, but ultimately, again, in each model, we have different levels of control, different responsibilities, and ultimately are on point for different aspects of these service delivery models. And finally, this cloud computing conceptual model, it brings all of those pieces together. It depicts them as an integrated diagram of system, organizational, role, and process components. The diagram also highlights that security and privacy, they're cross-cutting concerns for all of us, regardless of model. And we have to keep that shared responsibility model in mind as we embark upon the acquisition, deployment, and use of these kinds of tools. So in these graphics, I provide them just to further emphasize these important points. The service models, they don't always work the same way. Across the three different models, operational responsibilities like data protection, security, incident, or breach notification, breach response responsibilities, access to security logs and reports, and encryption at data at rest, they vary. For example, a software as a service provider is responsible for most of the technology stack. Therefore, the cloud service provider has more and broader responsibility for protecting data and reporting. On the other hand, an infrastructure as a service provider, they're essentially leasing infrastructure to the public agency. So the public jurisdiction is then responsible for its own data protection, encryption, and reporting. So these models shift where the responsibility lies. In infrastructure as a service, we manage the most. In software as a service, the provider manages almost everything, but we still own the data, the identity management responsibilities, and the access control decision making. So understanding these models and clearly understanding which responsibilities fall to the cloud service customer or provider and which responsibilities are shared is the foundation of good cloud security. So as time has passed, adoption increased, and the market has matured, we're all now confronted with a whole new set of new or hybrid models. We'll call them anything as a service. This X as a service variant, it represents various services delivered over the internet Things like security as a service, database as a service, identity as a service, now AI as a service, and many others. So these X as a service offerings, of course, they build on or utilize the infrastructure platform or software as a service models. Um, it just shows the flexibility and also the overlap in these kinds of service delivery models. As with the core models, again, government clients, they need to fully understand and adopt this shared responsibility model for security and appropriately identify and divide up these security responsibilities with their cloud service providers. So, you know, although we in government, we're relatively late to the party, so to speak, where cloud adoption is concerned, we're behind the private sector. Cloud adoption for sure is accelerating, sometimes dramatically across the state and local government and education marketplace. Cloud service adoption, it's no longer optional. It's sometimes the primary model that state agencies pursue. It's where the majority of modernization is happening. But that said, we're hosting sensitive data from education to criminal justice to health and human services, whether that be personally identifiable information, personal health information, criminal justice information, IRS data. Regardless, we're hosting that sensitive data in environments that were once only on premise, fully within our control. The issue, though, as we pursue cloud computing services, isn't that the cloud is inherently insecure. It's just differently secure, so to speak. It requires a new mindset, new or modified security and privacy controls, and again, implementation of this shared security accountability model. So this is the most important concept, if you take nothing else away from this talk today, the shared responsibility model. So providers, they secure the infrastructure, whether that be data centers, hypervisors, physical access. But we as government agencies, we're still responsible, no matter what, for how users authenticate, how data is classified and encrypted, which data is stored in the cloud, which data is processed through cloud applications, and how applications are configured. Many incidents, they occur just because this line is misunderstood. And where cloud service security is concerned, we have some important questions to ask and answer. When an incident happens in the cloud, speed and clarity matter. They matter a lot. So who informs whom? Who contains the breach? Who recovers data? Too often, what needs to be protected and who's responsible for key operational and security related activities, it isn't defined in our contracts or in our security playbooks. The key here, of course, going back to fundamentals, is a clear and documented RACI. Who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed. I'll now move to a brief discussion of the common risk, issues, challenges, and threats that we all face. Although some of us are more mature than others, I'm sure Washington's far out ahead of Oregon, but we have 50 states. And, you know, as that saying goes, if you've seen one state, you've seen one state. I think it'd be fair to say that, you know, many of us in government, in particular, when we're thinking about the thousands or nearly multiple tens of thousands of local government entities across the country, we don't all yet have our act fully together for our on-premise computing environments. And we certainly have a series of non-technical governance, policy, and operational issues that we need to be aware of and address. So, you know, many public sector organizations, just to start off with this first item, we have a set of governance, policy, and oversight gaps that we need to fill. We often lack a unified cloud governance framework or clearly understood and assigned responsibilities and accountabilities between the CIO, the business owner, and the cloud service provider. Second, cloud and as a service solutions, they periodically bypass traditional budget, procurement, and IT policy review, leading to shadow IT. It's not supposed to happen, but from time to time, it certainly does. Often, when this occurs, there's an absence of specific cloud security policies, acceptable use standards, and vendor risk management processes. Certainly, there's a lack of uniformity in regard to whether they're aligned with NIST or ISO frameworks, just for two examples. And many organizations, they haven't yet updated or clearly identified their data classification and retention policies for cloud environments. So that results in fragmented oversight, inconsistent security postures across departments, and unclear roles and responsibilities during incidents. Many of us also have a series of contracting, procurement, and legal challenges that we haven't yet addressed. Many of our RFPs and our existing contracts, they often lack enforceable security, privacy, and compliance clauses, such as data residency, audit rights, or breach notification terms. We consistently experience difficulties in negotiating enforceable service level agreements that include security metrics and that reinforce this shared responsibility set of clauses that we all really need in our contracts. Many of our procurement staff, they're not trained in cybersecurity, and certainly aren't up to speed with the new data privacy requirements in most states, certainly where cloud computing models, software, platform, and infrastructure as a service are concerned. And lastly, our licensing and subscription models. They can complicate incident response or data portability upon termination of the contract. So the impact here is that we have increased exposure to third-party risk, compliance violations, and sometimes the inability to respond effectively to security events. And the final bullet on this slide, it highlights the organizational and cultural barriers that we all face, in particular, when we think about moving from our legacy environments, sometimes 20, 30, 40-year-old systems. We've got staff that have been maintaining these on-premise legacy solutions for many, many years, sometimes their entire career. And now we're moving to these modern cloud platforms. And it's an uncomfortable situation for many. So all too often we face resistance from legacy IT staff or business owners that are unfamiliar with this shared responsibility requirement that's inherent in these cloud service models. Sometimes we have limited collaboration between the IT organization, whether that be at the enterprise level or the agency level, and our legal, compliance, and business leadership staff and professionals. That often leads to siloed decisions. Unless we reinforce this shared security responsibility model in our contracts and in our governance processes, leadership may simply underestimate these maturity requirements or assume that the provider is inherently secure, and so we don't have to pay attention to that. It's someone else's job. And this kind of thinking, it leads to security ownership confusion, inconsistent implementation, and a weak accountability culture, both within our organizations and as evidenced by our contracts with our providers. So, moving forward to the next set of issues, again, non-technical in nature, many of us, we have workforce and training deficits. Sometimes that's because of lack of budget. Sometimes it's because of lack of prioritization or focus. Regardless of the reason, this seems to really occur in particular when we have decentralized environments with organizations of different size, with different scope and scale, with different levels of expertise. So many agencies suffer from a lack of workforce skills in cloud architecture, vendor management, and contract security evaluation. The roles change, in particular if an agency or an enterprise moves hard toward cloud computing, there can be a significant need for upskilling and reskilling of our staff. At the same time, again, due to budget pressures, if for no other reason, we're not always able to offer the type of ongoing cloud security training that our teams need. There's also often a misalignment between our cloud adoption pace and our workforce readiness. In other words, training lags adoption. That's a common phenomenon. And this can lead to increased risks of human error, misconfigurations, or policy violations that create exploitable weaknesses. And for sure, we all face data governance and compliance challenges. Um, Hopefully, Irene will agree with this, that we have a lot of work to do in this area. But many of us, we just don't have a comprehensive data inventory that's accurate. We haven't yet classified our data or taken another run at our data as it changes over time. Many of us, we don't have sufficient insight into the provenance of our data. When it was collected, for what purpose, or what limitations or constraints of use exist. From agency to agency, compliance audits, they often reveal inconsistent application of data privacy and protection laws, whether that be HIPAA or FERPA or CJIS. Sometimes we have ambiguous and varied data ownership and lifecycle terms within our vendor agreements. And often we lack visibility in regard to where our data is stored, where it's replicated, where it's backed up. Certainly that's a phenomenon in our on-premise environments and can be further complicated and blurred by our third-party contracts, in particular when we have a multi or hybrid cloud environment. This puts us at great risk for non-compliance, for data leakage. It can sometimes render us unable to meet our audit or legal discovery obligations. Finally, on this slide, I'd highlight that it's been my experience. I started out in the Y2K project office in Oregon. That was one of the first times the state of Oregon pursued business continuity planning as a requirement for all agencies. And I can tell you that in this area, unclear roles and responsibilities, they exist between agencies and their service providers, whether they're the enterprise state data center or whether they're a cloud service provider, in particular when some kind of disruption, man-made incident or naturally caused incident happens. When we think about hybrid or multi-cloud operating environments, we often lack sufficient and coordinated incident notification and escalation procedures across these multiple vendors, in particular when we have a distributed or decentralized IT operating environment. I know Oregon struggles with this. For many of us, our business continuity and disaster recovery testing activities, they rarely include our cloud providers in the tests. We often assume how they might respond or what their procedures are, but we don't include them. It's a key area we need to think about. And finally, we're forced to rely, unless we compel this within our contracts, we're forced to rely on cloud service providers for logs, forensics, or evidence without these contractually guaranteed provisions that guarantee us access to that vital information. And lastly, on this slide, I want to hit on 4 additional items. I'll probably just, in the interest of time, hit on 1 or 2 of them, but certainly there is a financial set of risks internally in this transition from CapEx, on-premise turnkey solutions. We own all of the infrastructure, we own the system, to this pay-by-the-drink software infrastructure and platform as a service kind of OpEx situation. If we don't closely manage that transition, we can often end up with a situation where we have unmonitored cloud spend and sometimes orphaned cloud services that create hidden liabilities for the state. On the item of compliance and audit, many times we face limitations in this area because our cloud service providers, within the contracts or within their standard terms and conditions, they limit audit rights or visibility into infrastructure and or the security controls that they have deployed. That occurs unless we've insisted on those requirements being included in our cloud service contracts. I know that sometimes that's really difficult, certainly depending on the model that you choose. In addition, some of our auditing staff, whether they're in the IT organization or in our case in Oregon, in our Secretary of State audits division, they may not yet have training or understand this shared responsibility model, the nuances that exist, in particular in a multi-tenant environment. And finally, we often in our contracts, certainly if we're accessing contracts that were established several years ago, they may not include requirements for alignment with the NIST cybersecurity framework, with CIS controls, the Center for Internet Security, with GovRAMP authorization, et cetera. So they may not be consistently aligned, and our contracts may not yet require that. So on the previous set of slides, I outlined 10 governance, policy, and organizational risks. On this slide, I've just listed 15 of the most common technical risks that have been found time and time again to create issues for organizations in all sectors, but certainly they exist with public sector deployment of cloud service solutions as well. In the interest of time, I won't go through the list, but I'll instead provide it for your review following the presentation. Suffice it to say that security in the cloud, it's always not just a technical conversation, but it's a governance, policy, and operational conversation as well. We need a diverse set of stakeholders at the table doing a 360 review of our planned acquisition, deployment, and use of cloud services in order to get it right. So I'll move to some common threats in the cloud, certainly those that have contributed to recent data breaches that many of us have heard about. This list of top threats to cloud computing, they were identified as an outcome of a recent Cloud Security Alliance 2024 survey. They surveyed 500 industry experts on security issues in the cloud industry. Their analysis, it produced observations on the prevalence of gaps that are currently observed most frequently, the growing impact of identity and access management, and supply chain risks on cloud security, and the changing profile of threat actors targeting cloud services. And most importantly, they identified a set of key takeaways that cloud users, builders, and defenders can implement to further cybersecurity resilience in their organizations. And so I'll hit on each of those just very briefly. So within the publication, CSA analyzed and threat modeled a series of breach cases. They focused on the Snowflake customers' data breaches, Football Australia, CrowdStrike, Toyota, Darkbeam, Retool, and Fortress, FTX, and Microsoft, each happening from 2022 to 2024 or so. The top cloud concerns manifested within each of these breach cases, they map back to the top threats 1 through 11 that I had on the previous slide. But here, this just gives you an indication of how often these issues occurred in each one of those breaches. So the information on this slide presents the information in a slightly different way. It reflects CSA's analysis of these real-world cloud breaches and groups them in tiers based on their observed recurrence or occurrence. Although all of these threats in each of the tiers, they're all important, they all need to be taken seriously. The tier 1 observations are what I'm going to focus on here, in particular, this issue of identity and access management. In these cases, this resulted or occurred, this particular IAM weakness or threat, what came as a result of weak access controls, lack of multi-factor authentication, and privileged escalation capabilities. They didn't have their systems locked down in these ways. The second area, misconfiguration and inadequate change control. In these cases, it resulted from improperly secured cloud environments, and that led to prolonged data exposure. And finally, in this top tier, insecure software development. In these cases, it resulted from weak software development practices, delivery and deployment approaches, and that introduced security flaws that attackers exploited. Certainly, this can occur both in the on-premise environment, but here, of course, in the cloud environment as well. And this slide I've just included to provide more information in the far right column on the estimated scope, scale, or financial loss that was involved in each one of these breaches. Here you can see a range from 370,000 for the football AU breach to 400 million for the FTX breach. I know in my home state of Oregon, we have 36 counties, 241 incorporated cities, 197 school districts, and approximately 1,000 special districts. We've been working with them for several years to try to help them improve their security posture. I'll tell you, a good number of them, almost half of our special districts, it's been reported, don't even have one information technology staff person in their employ or on contract. And so they're at risk. They're in a situation where they're not able to improve their security posture on their own. They need help from others. And so a key case in point, one of our small counties in 2023 on the Oregon coast experienced a ransomware attack. All county services, including 911, were affected. They went offline for some time and were brought on incrementally, restored. They had no viable data backups, and ultimately, as the county commission refused to pay the roughly $750,000 ransom demand, they had to restore their computing environment, cloud and on-premise, from the ground up. They could only do this with help from federal, state, regional, and other local government agencies. I'm sure there were a few private sector entities in the mix as well. Ultimately, it was my understanding that full recovery and restoration of their computing environment will be in the range of between $3 and $5 million. So this is just one of Oregon's 36 counties, a very small county on our coast with significant impact. So, of course, the vulnerabilities, threats, and security weaknesses that are outlined in the top threats to cloud computing 2024, they've materialized themselves in these real-world breaches, exposing recurring failure patterns and misconfigurations that attackers continue to exploit. By analyzing these incidents, the Cloud Security Alliance identified the following set of 8 actionable lessons that organizations in all sectors can adopt today to enhance their cloud security and mitigate these kinds of breach risks. Again, in the interest of time, I want to leave some time for questions, so I'm going to leave this information for your review after today's event. But here are 4 on this slide, and the remaining 4 are presented here. Although some of these key takeaways and lessons learned are about building security in from the start, they're also about building cyber resiliency for the long haul. I mean, we've got to expect that these incidents are going to occur. We won't be able to prevent all of them. And so we have to take steps to ensure we prepare for them, that we lessen the impact of them, and again, become more resilient organizations for the long haul. I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at the 8 in totality, at least at the bolded level on the slides, but I think it seems like a really good list to me of actions that we can begin thinking about in our own organizations to implement in the near term. So as we're all experiencing, government use of cloud-based computing, it continues to accelerate, driven by increasing demands for digital business applications. We also have declining government resources. I think all of us are faced with budget reductions or budget pressures, and certainly on the flip side, we have increasing cybersecurity threats and ever-increasing cloud service offerings. This X as a service kind of phenomenon that we're all dealing with. At the same time, most organizations were now using cloud-first strategies to overcome these long lead times associated with on-premise modernization efforts. Again, these 20, 30, 40-year-old systems that have left us somewhat frozen in time. We can take a variety of approaches to modernize or replace them. And certainly cloud has become a predominant model that many agencies are pursuing. Um, the ease of access in highly decentralized or federated organizations, though, it has also spiked unauthorized or rogue cloud spend, shadow IT systems, which left unchecked can result in significant data and security risks. So a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to be involved with a group of senior fellows with the Center for Digital Government to update a publication called the Center for Digital Government's Best Practice Guide for Cloud and as-a-Service Procurement. Within that guide, we highlighted the importance of establishing a risk and authorization management program and or seeking out the services of this type of program. Many of you may have heard of FedRAMP. Certainly for the last couple of years, a nonprofit was stood up called StateRAMP. It has changed its name and augmented its services. It's now called GovRAMP. But here I present a RAMP checklist. It was established or put in place to provide guidance to state and local governments that intend to pursue the procurement, deployment, and use of cloud services. As I mentioned, the foundations of this program were built off of FedRAMP. It aligns with NIST special publication 853, Security and Privacy Controls and Standards. It highlights or focuses in on the impact levels based on data sensitivity and the nature of these privacy requirements. It involves independent audits by accredited third-party organizations. It involves the continuous monitoring of a cloud service provider, an assessment up front, not just only at the time of procurement, but all throughout the engagement, all throughout the term of the agreement, continuous monitoring and reporting over time. Really important concepts that this type of program envisions. Here, again, I won't go through these terms and conditions, but within the document, we identified 28 clauses. At its heart, the best practice guide, it highlights the importance of this set of terms and conditions, if for no other reason, to serve as a list of questions, to call out a comprehensive list of issues that any government organization should consider as part of its cloud service solution procurement. You may be in a position where you've addressed all of these issues and more, but many have not, in particular because all of our contracts have not been trued up. We're accessing procurement vehicles that were established over time, and they may or may not address these important issues. Starting and maintaining a RAMP in government, it requires cooperation and alignment between executive management in IT, cybersecurity, risk management, legal, and contracting. Each one of these functional roles plays an important part in developing and operating a risk and authorization management program. This table, which is presented on this slide and the next, just highlights some of those issues, some of those important activities that, as you think about procuring cloud solutions, you need to ask and answer some critical questions and ensure you've addressed some of these key issues along that procurement lifecycle. So this table, there have been some states that have pursued the establishment of a risk and authorization management program themselves. Key among them, Arizona. Their initiative was discretionary, and Texas. TexRAMP was established in this case as on a compulsory basis via a Senate Bill 475 in 2021 in the state of Texas. It mandated that the Texas Department of Information Resources stand up a program and run that program to ensure they had upfront and continuous security posture assurance over time. And so this table just describes the different facets of establishing a ramp program through an organization like GovRamp, formerly State Ramp, or pursuing a do-it-yourself ramp. And certainly both states, Arizona and Texas, they caution other states. They were part of this work group that I mentioned that updated this best practice guide a few years ago. They certainly recommend a phased approach. They highlight the fact that attempting to establish a do-it-yourself risk and authorization management program, it's resource intensive, expertise intensive, time intensive, and ultimately costly. And so with all of those factors in mind, Arizona did decide to transition to GovRamp, and they've already done that. Their CIO serves on the board of GovRamp. So I'd encourage you, if you aren't familiar with GovRamp, to do some investigation and take a look at what they have to offer to state and local government and education organizations across the country. Here again, in the interest of time, I won't go through each of these steps, but I provided this as a high-level depiction of the GovRamp authorization process for cloud service providers. It does align somewhat with the FedRAMP process, but importantly, FedRAMP, although that's helpful, it's not sufficient in state contracts because FedRAMP requires that a federal agency sponsor a cloud service provider, and ultimately it's the federal agency and the cloud service provider that can determine whether others outside of that kind of circle of trust have access to the audits, the continuous monitoring reports over time, et cetera. So it really isn't a good fit to just accept FedRAMP authorization to operate in a state contract or an education contract. And so that's why this GovRamp organization was stood up to provide similar processes, similar assurance, but to provide enhanced state, local government, and education-focused services. Again, I won't go through this, but this slide describes the process for continuous monitoring of the security posture of cloud service providers and their service offerings over time. And here, this particular slide outlines the high-level process, the categories that state and local government and education organizations can consider when they adopt a risk and authorization management program like GovRamp. The accept, prefer, or require lanes here, obviously, as the slide depicts, requiring that an organization fully adopts GovRamp, that cloud service providers are required to be GovRamp ready or authorized in our contracts is the best practice approach that's recommended. And lastly, I provided this slide as a case study from the state of Utah, just as an example of the choices that they made regarding GovRamp adoption. Generally speaking, GovRamp recommends a 2-year glide path for full GovRamp adoption, and that's the approach that the state of Utah took. Next, I thought I'd briefly provide an overview of Oregon's information technology organizational structure, and also just highlight where we are from cybersecurity and cloud security here in Oregon. Information technology governance and operations within Oregon state government in the executive branch, it's highly decentralized. We have about 2,300 to 2,400 IT classified staff spread across 50 different state agencies. The state CIO's organization only includes about 250 to 300 of those IT classified positions. The rest of them are out in the agencies. Of course, the other branches, the constitutional offices, they're not subject to the state CIO's authority. Instead, their IT programs and their modernization projects are overseen by my office. And we do have a significant legacy system backlog. We estimate here about $2.3 billion in biennial spend on technology across the branches, and about 75 to 80% of that money is spent on maintaining and supporting legacy systems and infrastructure. I provided this graphic to just further illustrate the decentralized organizational structure within Oregon government and the executive branch. Certainly, our office and I, on behalf of the Joint Committee on Information Management Technology, believe that this decentralized structure, it contains significant redundancy and duplication. Um, in certain areas, it's costly. In certain areas, it's insecure and needs to be bolstered. And certainly has been a barrier over time to accelerating the modernization of these legacy systems and the use of enterprise or shared IT services. So where cloud is concerned in 2021, 2020, and 2021, the state CIO adopted a cloud forward strategy for Oregon. This strategy called for the establishment of a cloud services advisory council and a cloud center of innovation. It called for our state data center to serve as a broker for cloud services, in particular in the infrastructure as a service category for executive branch agencies. Although Oregon hasn't yet reached, and honestly, I don't know what the percentage is at this point, we haven't reached that vision of conducting 75% of our business via cloud-based services and infrastructure by 2025 this year. There has been a significant increase in the adoption of cloud service solutions over the past few years. So in the next couple of slides, I'll just briefly touch on our cybersecurity services within the executive branch. First, it's important to note that in 2016 and 2017, the governor via Executive Order 1613 and the Oregon legislature via Senate Bill 90 took action to unify executive branch information security staff from the agencies into the office of the state CIO. So it's really one of the only areas where we do have centralization, unification of staff, in addition to our state data center, which occurred about a decade or more ago. This is the current functional organizational chart for the state's cybersecurity services program. Through Senate Bill 90 in 2017, the program led by the state chief information security officer grew from about 25 staff to about 65 to 70 staff where it stands today. However, it's important to note we still have this decentralized operational environment where state agency boards and commissions, they still have operational responsibility for all infrastructure and systems from the router in and for all applications and data regardless of hosting location, whether that be on-premise, at the state data center, or in one or more cloud service hosting facilities. And this for sure creates a complicated operational environment to secure. The state CISO and team, they've developed a crawl, walk, and run plan for implementation of a series of operational initiatives from 2024 to 2026 that range from upskilling and reskilling his team to publishing a cybersecurity services catalog to developing and publishing standard operating procedures for all core services to finally conducting a series of cybersecurity exercises to identify and close cybersecurity gaps across the enterprise. This graphic, it depicts the top 6 initiatives that are currently being pursued by the state CISO and his team. Importantly, the list includes initiatives focused on the implementation of zero trust network architecture and the deployment of a cloud access security broker. Certainly this broker, it will act as a security control point between users and cloud service providers. And back to the zero trust network architecture, it will necessarily include the implementation of identity and access management. Here I've just provided some of the reasons why zero trust is so important. It recognizes these kinds of issues are real, they have an impact, and they must be addressed. Here I've highlighted the effort underway by the Office of Enterprise Information Services, aka the state CIO's office, on identity and access management and on identity governance, an identity governance approach that is comprehensive, that includes not only state government employees, but other key stakeholders as well. On this slide, again, just highlighting this cloud Access Security Broker Initiative. There is a team in the state's CISO's organization that will be responsible for provisioning this solution. Certainly the hope is that by integrating the CASB with the state's security services, security operations center tools, it will enhance threat detection and incident response capabilities, both in the cloud and safeguarding sensitive data across cloud platforms, knowing that in this decentralized environment, we have not only a hybrid computing environment, but a hybrid environment that includes multiple cloud hosting facilities. All the while, the state cybersecurity services program continues to focus on human risk management improvements through a variety of security awareness training events on specific topics that I've listed here, and on launching a cybersecurity awareness campaign focused initially on ransomware quarter by quarter, and now focused on securing Oregon's critical infrastructure with an initial focus on the water and wastewater sector. And the next couple of slides, again, I won't belabor the point, but we are one of the states that is pursuing GovRAMP implementation. We have a relationship established. We're on that 2-year glide path of adopting GovRAMP's risk and authorization management program, this vendor authorization process. And we're definitely looking forward to reaping the benefits, not only of upfront assessments, but also monitoring of cloud providers continuously and their solutions through the GovRAMP program over the many months to come. The last couple of slides I'm not going to hit on at any level of detail in the interest of time, but just wanted to include some guideline documents and some policies. We have some links provided within the slides that describe each of the policies. Certainly here we have a cloud and hosted systems policy and procedure. Its purpose is to guide agencies as they consider these solutions, ensuring that they've looked at data sensitivity levels, data privacy and security concerns, and that they fully evaluated that the cloud provider they intend to pursue has their act together. As part of those policies and procedures, agencies are offered a workbook to allow them to provide the necessary information for the state CIO's office to assess whether they're ready to proceed from planning to procurement and implementation of a cloud service offering. This has been refined a couple of times over the past few years. Certainly, I think is due for another refresh. And lastly, on this topic of AI, the state CIO in April of 2025 did issue some updated guidance on AI access and usage. Of course, AI, cybersecurity, and data, the through line of all of this is data governance, data management, data inventory and classification, and this updated guidance certainly highlighted that for agencies. In the interest of time, I won't talk much about the policies themselves, but these initial policies on data governance and information asset classification, they were established when I was the deputy state CIO back in 2008 and 2009. They were recently refreshed in 2022 and 2023. I believe there's a more recent update that folks are looking at now, again, to accommodate this dramatic acceleration of the piloting and prototyping of AI solutions. And again, this need to re-emphasize the importance of data governance and information asset classification in that context. So at this point, I'll close the presentation. I just want to emphasize a few points. Cloud is now the default environment for government information and service delivery. If we're not there yet, it's where we're headed, recognizing that I think we'll always be working in this hybrid on-premise and multi-cloud environment. Security, of course, it's not something we can outsource. It's, as they say, a team sport, and it must be a shared responsibility with our cloud service providers. And finally, success really is going to depend on leadership here, collaboration, coordination, in particular in states where we have this decentralized organizational structure. We've got to invest in and establish governance. We've got to invest in our people, and we've got to put mechanisms in place to be able to effectively hold our vendors accountable. If we get those things right, I think we can deliver secure, modern, cloud-based services to the public. With that, I'd like to close the presentation. I want to thank you all for your time and attention. My apologies that I appear to have taken up almost all the time, but am happy to answer any questions, at minimum offline, if any of you want to contact me after the event.
Sean, thank you so much. This was really informative. The similarities between Washington and Oregon, I think, were highlighted, and we definitely heard some really good ideas there. And it looks like Leslie has a question, and I have opened the chat as well.
Hello, Sean. Hello.
Hi, Leslie.
So my question has to do with auditing and risk management, and I wanted to know how Oregon holds agencies and others, partners and others, accountable for non-compliance of security controls and mechanisms, especially in the cloud.
Certainly. Well, of course, some of that in this space in particular happens behind the scenes. A good bit of it does. Our Secretary of State audit team, of course, has their schedule of audits. As you very well know, they're only able to assess a certain number of agencies each year and follow the CIS set of security controls. They certainly focus in on these new implementation groups, depending on the size of the agencies. But at the same time, the state chief information security officer and his team, they have a schedule of these security assessments, audits with a subset of those agencies. And they try to get to all of the executive branch agencies, some 75 to 80 on a rotating basis. Where non-compliance is concerned, certainly there is a set of scorecards for each agency that the state CISO provides to the agency director. And if one exists, the IT director within the agency identifies those control weaknesses or gaps and works with them to try to remediate those issues. And certainly, if it appears that an agency isn't taking the issues seriously, then there's a different kind of conversation that the state CIO and the state CISO have with those same parties. So, I know that's a generic answer, but I'm sure you all have a similar approach in Washington. This isn't something that you want to have a discussion out in the open because you're creating vulnerabilities. You're shining a bright light on vulnerabilities, which sometimes is really needed, but you don't want to do it publicly on this particular issue because you can really cause some harm.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks again. It was a great presentation.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I don't see any other questions. Most people had to go to another meeting, but I will make sure if we have any to email you that I just email, and then I noticed you had your contact information. We will be posting the slide deck as well as the recording. Thank you again, Sean.
And again, the contact information is on the very last slide. I didn't display it in the recording, but it is included in the PDF version of the slide deck that you're going to post. So
okay. Well, thank you again. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for the opportunity.